In 2022, 274 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance and protection. Preventing, mitigating, and responding to humanitarian crises is a challenge. Can fiction and storytelling play a role? Can it raise awareness and motivate action to address the causes and consequences of humanitarian crises? My name is Ruth Mukwana, and I host the SAHA podcast, Stories and Humanitarian Action. Welcome to SAHA Pod, Stories and Humanitarian Action. I have a great guest for you today. Before I introduce her, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, to like, comment, and share this video. My guest today is Danuta Hinc, a Polish-American novelist, short story writer, and essayist. She holds an M.A. in Philology from the University of Gdańsk, where she won the Polish national competition for best dissertation in the Humanities. She received an M.F.A. in writing and literature from Bennington College, where she was awarded the Barry Hannah Merit Scholarship in Fiction. She teaches writing at the University of Maryland and is the author of We Were Twins, which is the book that we will be discussing today. Welcome to the show, Danuta.
Thank you, Ruth. I'm happy to be here.
No, and I'm so glad. I know we've been trying to have this interview for a while, so I'm glad we've actually managed to make it happen today.
Me too.
Yeah. So congratulations, first of all, for writing this excellent book, We Were Twins. My first question for you is, what inspired you to write this book?
The original inspiration came from the events of 9/11, but what drove the idea further was the question of humanity. Is it possible to imagine humanity of a person who commits terrible acts of terror? And I wanted to explore this question and see if I can construct a character that would be convincing to my readers and to sort of open a new way of seeing the relationships we hold with each other on different kind of bases, political and geographical and religious and cultural. And I am hoping that this theme resonates with my readers.
Certainly with me, it resonates a lot because, I'm a big proponent of, what we really share across the world is our humanity. And for those who will read your book, and I'm hoping many people will read it, I think they will also really see how you've treated the main character, Tahir, and how you've actually managed to make him human and actually get the reader to have empathy for him. But I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. Before we actually talk about the book itself, as you know, the podcast really interrogates this question of, can fiction raise awareness? Can it motivate action? And I'm curious to hear your perspective on this question.
I did think about this often, and why do we tell stories? Why are we interested in stories? And I am thinking that all over the world and on every single continent in every single country of the planet, we tell stories to our children. We sort of like all of us, the entire human race is raised on stories from the beginning. And I was wondering, like, why do we really do this? Why do we need stories to tell each other from a very early age? And I think that we sort of examine our own humanity, our own being, our own experience by telling stories to each other. They become a compass of our moral standing in the world. We teach children how to be ethical we teach them the difference between good and evil. And I feel like the same kind of purpose serves us in all stories, including when we become adults and are entangled in difficult subjects of history. And I feel like what we do with stories is we try to understand ourselves, to see ourselves in others, to learn empathy, to understand the other kind of person who is different than us. And we try to um, explain maybe the shared experience of being alive on this planet.
Right. And I'm so glad you talk about storytelling. It's one of those things that I'm personally very, very interested in, because it's a story, a good story, and good fiction for that matter, can really achieve so much in terms of helping us understand people who are very different from us, whether when it comes to identity or culture or customs or ethnicity or race. And I feel story has a special place to help us really understand what that experience, the lived experience is for other human beings.
And also, what is more interesting than learn about others to see who you are as an individual? And for me, this is, I think, the most interesting part of writing is to discover others, discover other cultures and other religions and other people and other places, also geographically. I love to travel and to try the food people have to offer. And I am always amazed um, with how much we are alike and how much we really care about all the same things, about being loved, and we love our children. We care about safety and comforts and being respected, right? This kind of is very similar across all cultures, all races, all customs, all countries.
Absolutely. And you're bringing it back really to your first point about our shared humanity.
That's right.
Um, Before we talk about the book, and I'll just put it on the screen. This is the book, When We Were Twins. Can you read an excerpt an
I'll
excerpt
be,
from the book?
I'll be happy to. I prepared two excerpts. One is from the time when Tahir, the main character, and his twin sister Aisha are children. They are about 6 years old, playing in the garden, and we kind of discover who they are, their personalities, the differences and similarities, sort of. And then the second excerpt is from a little bit later in the novel, where they are about 30 years old and their lives are already very different, but they still are the same sort of personalities that we discover when they are children. So let me start with the first one, when they are playing in the garden. For the children, the garden has its own hidden mysteries that are revealed in the deepest corners behind the azalea thick with heavy and sweet blooms. One day the mysteries reveal themselves as the fear and helplessness of the spider's prey, seeping slowly through the tight cocoon when Tahir tries to free a butterfly. Tiri, go, he cries as loud as he can, throwing the sticky and motionless body in the air, still hoping, not yet grasping the radical power of death. Another day, the mysteries come in the form of discovering the forbidden, when Aisha crawls under the bush and helps grandmother Rumaisa's favorite cat deliver her naked and defenseless kittens. Cat cow, pussycat. Aisha reaches for them without hesitation. Mesh mesh, come here. She crawls on her stomach. Don't be afraid. Mesh mesh, she says, stroking the soft fur stained with blood. My little babies. She embraces the huddled, squealing blind creatures with pride and gratitude for having witnessed the beginning of new life. The day Aisha confesses her envy to Tahir, they are alone in the garden. Tired from running, they decide to rest at the edge of the flower pool. The air, thick with sweetness, hovers in the sweltering sun, slowing their breaths, filling their bodies with blissful weight. Receding behind the tall palm trees, the sun throws long lines across the flower pools. The day, closing slowly to the Al-Maghr prayer, evokes silent anticipation. Tahir closes his eyes and tilts his head slightly back and to the side, and his imagination takes over. He arises like a bird or a cloud, lightly and silently, with no effort. He stretches out his arms and glides towards the highest roofs, where he stops for a while to look at the minaret shimmering in the background of the clearest sky, and the silver surface of the lake surrounded by white beaches at the edge of the city. After his eyes finally feel satisfied with all he wanted to see in the distance, he steers himself above the roof to find the long swords of palm leaves that strayed into the drainpipe. Controlling every single movement of the descent, he lowers himself and reaches for leaves. He picks them up gently between his fingers and studies their rough surface, always with the same astonishment. They are drying up already, he whispers, and busies himself with finding more and more different colors, from greens to dark browns, depending on how much time they spend in the blazing sun. He inhales deeply the high air filled with the smell of the sea. The sun is lowering itself to close the day with the silent, gentle breath of a soft breeze, when suddenly Tahir is jolted by cold blades. Only after he opens his eyes, he understands it is water. Aisha laughs, hitting the surface of the water in the flower pool, splashing her brother and screaming, Wake up, Tahir! Wake up! You are so stupid! He screams, jumping off the edge. Me? She laughs louder and hits the surface of the water with all her might. The white fans spring towards Tahir faster and faster, darkening the edge of the pool and the polished river rocks covering the paths under their feet. Stop it, Tahir yells, moving back and wiping his face. You are stupid. And you sleep all the time, she mocks his voice. I don't, Tahir defends himself. I don't sleep, I think. About what? She doesn't give up. Making up silly stories again? You are jealous. He knows how to hurt her. A long silence falls over the garden. Aisha wipes her hands on her dress and starts to pick at her nails. For a while she looks at the goblets of the lotus flowers and the flat leaves speckled with fast-drying drops of water, and then she moves her gaze to the pebbles on the paths, to the tips of the trees. Kicking her right foot in the air, she stays silent. It's different for you, Aisha. Tahir sits down next to her. It's different because you are a girl, he says softly. They all see only you. She looks him straight in the eye. They cheer only you. Tahir is a true miracle. He memorized the Quran. Tahir, Tahir, Tahir. And you are the fastest runner, remember? And also, Tahir doesn't finish. She jumps off the edge as if on fire. Do you always have to be such a saint? She screams, stomping her foot. I am not a saint. You are. She interrupts him again, stomping her foot one more time. And you are too. He spreads his arms helplessly. No, I am not. I am not, and I don't want to be. I don't want to be good. I don't want to. And I don't want to be myself. She holds back her tears, shivering. What are you talking about? Tahir takes a step toward her. You are crazy. You are crazy. You are stupid, like everyone else. She screams, running towards the thick azalea bushes in the farthest corner of the garden. So that was the first excerpt. And the second one is from the time when the twins are about 30 years old, adults already. When Aisha calls, Tahir jumps and accidentally kicks the table. After composing himself, he looks around, embarrassed. Luckily, no one at the restaurant pays any attention to him. He's not used to carrying a cell phone in his pocket, and every time it rings, it startles him. He's sitting on a patio with a view of the Mosque of Muhammad Ali in Cairo. In the distance, the dome looks white, and the two tallest minarets are silver. In front of him is a plate with two pieces of kunafa, a blue teapot, a sugar bowl, and a glass of black tea. Did I startle you again? Aisha asks. I can't get used to it, Tahir laughs. But it's wonderful, isn't it? I can call you from Berlin. Imagine that, she says, laughing too. In the background, children's voices scream. One uses actual words. Mine, give it back, mine. The other is just a high-pitched scream. How are they? Tahir asks. I'm losing my mind. Aya just started walking, so she's everywhere now. And Atta is trying to keep his toys away from her. It's a madhouse, she laughs. Walter is coming back tomorrow from his business trip, and I already can't wait to hand them over, she says, the tone of her voice light. It would be nice to see the kids next month, Tahir says, looking at the mosque. The structure seems to float above the hill. About that, Aisha says, can you bring me Mom's watercolors, all of them, please? That would be too heavy. There are like 7 or more, he says. No, not the frames. Take them out and roll them up. Oh, I can do that, no problem, Tahir says and takes a sip of his tea. You are the best brother, Tahir, Aisha says to the screams of her son. You wouldn't have said that when we were twins, he says. Remember, we used to fight like Aya and Atta. Where? Aisha says, laughing. What are you talking about? I mean children, when we were children. Back then I could feel you being my twin, or something like that, he says, and looks into the distance, sipping his tea. Now, he pauses. The children have quieted down, and he can hear Atta saying, Aya, you can have this, okay? I will always be your twin sister, Tahir, Aisha says quietly. I know. And also, I don't know. I can't feel it anymore. I can't find you in myself, he says. They both pause and listen to the sound around them for a moment. What about you, Tahir? Aisha says. How are you doing, really? Tahir starts to say something, but what he says makes no sense. Disconnected words and sounds with no structure or essence. Follow the choppy line of his voice. He's trying to find the right words while also deciding if he wants to tell her the truth. Just say it, Aisha says, and Tahir suddenly remembers that she has always understood him better than anyone else. I am thinking about going back to Afghanistan with Ahmed, he says. No, no, Tahir, don't do it. Nothing good can come of it. Go back to college. Finish your medical degree. She's trying to be convincing, but her tone is not focused. Her attention is elsewhere. The children are screaming again. Tahir imagines his sister waving her hand and bringing her index fingers to her lips, but he knows that her children are too young to follow such signal. As he waits for her to calm them, something in him and around him moves. It's like a wave that rearranges things and leaves a new order. He feels himself disconnecting from Aisha, not because she said don't do it, but because he said, I can't feel it anymore. I can't find you in myself. With these words, he has created a new reality. The disconnection is not a rupture, he realizes. It is the conclusion of something very gradual. It's like a coastline that erodes a little bit every year, eating away the land, expanding the way of the ocean.
Thank you. Thank you for reading that, Danuta. And I like that, we meet the twins when they are young and then much later in life when they are older. And I guess one of the questions, in fact, really for me comes from the childhood that Taha, had. He grew up in such a loving childhood, loving family, middle class family, doing quite relatively well, special child. Kind of, as a writer, you give him this saintly personality in many ways. He's able to learn to memorize the Quran, and there's that jealousy between or envy between him and Aisha because Aisha is like, oh, you're the one, you're the chosen one. So, just talk to me about that journey for this child, this sweet boy, and what changes him to actually end up doing what he does in the book.
That's a great question. And it was the biggest challenge to imagine a person who is very sensitive and caring and intelligent and studious, to sort of being swept away by life and strange circumstances. And part of his strength is the love for his cousin Ahmed, but this is also his weakness, because he tries to support Ahmed's humanitarian efforts of helping others, but at the same time, he follows Ahmed into the political sort of unrest that, and without giving up too much of the story, he is following Ahmed in a way that doesn't allow him to make his own decisions in a sense. Like his decisions become swept by a huge wave of historical events. And I think that what I wanted to show is how easy it is for someone who cannot resist a huge historical sort of events and stand on his own sort of 2 feet, but to follow those he loves and kind of becomes, I think swept away is probably the best word, with the decisions that are not really his. It's a little bit more complicated, right? When, especially in a world where information is presented to you by people you trust, you lose your own perspective. And if you trust people who are, for example, misinformed, then you will be misinformed as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so glad, you also talk about that, because he definitely loved his cousin a lot. And he was very empathetic and quite angry at what happened to his cousin. And I think as one reads the book, one can see that shift in Tahir at that moment. Coming back to the Aisha as well, and in a minute I'll also I'd want to hear your thoughts on. You have all these very strong female characters in the book, and I hope we can have time to talk about them. But in the last excerpt you read, there's this statement, which is also the title of the book, "When We Were Twins." What is the significance of that? When he says that, what is going on for him in that moment?
That's a great question. Yes, so this is the moment of the disconnect, and kind of I wanted this to be the metaphor for when we disconnect from others, we forget that we are all twins. So you are my twin, and everyone, around the planet, we are all brothers and sisters. And I'm talking about twins because I come from the same womb, come from the same place of our species, so to speak. And when we kind of forget this, we see this disconnection when Tahir, who loves his sister and has this mystical connection with her, he remembers the lessons their mother taught them when they were fighting as children. Their mother would say, look at your hands, like you have the same, uh, you know, this on the palm of your hand, like they are exactly the same. You should love each other and collaborate rather than fight. This every mother says it to their children, right? Like you are the same family, you are. But also what Laila, their mother, is talking about, she's actually talking about the humanity, not only about her children, her twins, but humanity, right? In a sense. So she is teaching them to see the similarities between them and love each other. Sort of, she's trying to teach them to, and she succeeds because they become the best of friends and the best of siblings in the book. But then Tahir, in this moment that I was reading, that in this excerpt, he can feel like he's pulled away from the lessons of his mother, from the lessons of his grandmother, from the lessons of his sister, and he's pulled kind of away. There are forces, kind of historical forces. He's trying to reconnect with something that happened during the war between Russia and Afghanistan. He just misses the camaraderie with his cousin and his friends fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan. It's sort of he feels himself being pulled away from life towards war again, even though the war is over. But the feeling of war, because he experienced it, stayed with him. And there is something about the war that was positive for him. That was the camaraderie he felt, the belonging to the people that fought the Soviets in Afghanistan. And he's trying to kind of relive that and
Right.
try to find it again. I think this is what he feels like. He's disconnecting from Aisha and from life
Right.
itself.
It's such a great metaphor, I have to say. And because again, I think in we can see their mother, as you were also explaining to us readers, when she really tells them you're connected, everything in life is connected. When you protect the other, you're protecting yourself. And I think it's also such a great metaphor on how life is, Um, often you'll hear a lot of people say, my protectors are my neighbors, beyond the very microcosm family. I think there's that reliance that we really have as human beings across the world. It is the people who will actually protect us.
That's right. This is exactly right. I'm just thinking about water. Water is another symbol in the book where people are the ocean, sort of like drops of water. Like when I'm thinking about water, is when my neighbor, poisons his well, I am going to, or poisons my well, right? We are going to drink the same water from. So if we take care of the well, if we take care of the water, keep it pure and clean and healthy, it will benefit all of us. When we poison the well, it will spread sort of under the ground, and we will all be drinking poisoned water. For some reason, the water kind of came to my mind when you asked that question. Yeah, we have to. There is no other way of living and preserving our life and humanity but to um, love your neighbor. I mean,
Yes. 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 And yeah, I'm actually cognizant we are almost running out of time, and we've already touched upon some of the characters already. Of course, Aisha has of the female characters. Aisha herself, very strong character. She's a twin, very successful. She's an immigrant. She's a doctor, but there's always that tension. Her family doesn't, think she's very successful. Their mother, Laila, and a whole host of other female characters that you have in the book. And was this a deliberate choice decision for you? And what is the role of all of these women in the book?
I wanted women to be the protectors of life in the book because we see they deliver babies, right? Women have this amazing role that can deliver a baby. So in the book, they are the protectors of life, and they are trying to protect the life in many different ways, um, uh, including ways where in concentration camps during World War II, Irene's grandmother, one of the characters, turns kind of evil into goodness. In Auschwitz, we see Irene as the protector of life. She also delivers twins. She is the wife of Marek. Marek is Tahir's best friend from the war in Afghanistan. And Irene is this very spiritual being who um, has wings, actually. The wings are visible to those who cross into the realm of life, which would be her husband. He talks about it to Tahir that sometimes he can see her wings at night. So we have another woman, and I think that one of the kind of important character, well, they are all important, but the most important characters in the book is the character of the god in the book, which is two women. So the god consists of two twin kind of women, homeless women who are trying to teach Tahir sort of, or show him what it means to be human, how you can uh, become the best version of yourself only when you see yourself in another person, when you see your reflection in them, when you can kind of relate to another person and not see them as the other, but as your brother and sister, as someone who is explaining actually your own humanity to you. So if you can have enough empathy to see the humanity of another person, then you actually can also understand yourself fully. So the twin gods, also two women. So yes, there are many also minor characters that are women who are trying to pull um, men, mostly men in the book, out of war and into life. So that was my
Yeah. No, and I'm glad, as a writer myself, I mean, first of all, I have to say for me, it's just easier to write female characters, but, but also the role of women in the world, the role of women when it comes to war, when it comes to bring peace, is really not as sung, as praised, as written about. So I always really enjoy to see these heroes, these heroic women, whose stories are often left out of most of the literature that we read.
I agree with you. This is important to sort of remember how how I feel like a role of a mother changes everything, right? When this is actually it was the beginning of the first version of the book. The title was "To Kill the Other." The first version of the book. When I was working on it, I was thinking that the the strongest connection that we have is of a mother with a child. And that connection kind of explained to me, or seeing that connection, the strength of the connection explained to me how we sort of should see each other as kind of brothers and sisters, and kind of and see our humanity in each other, rather than to regard others as the other. So I think that the relationship between a mother and a child helped me to kind of like from that to parse out the other relationships.
No, and I mean, as a mother, just digress for a minute there, but as a mother myself, I've often felt like if majority of people loved their children, loved other people the way they loved their children,
Yes,
because I
we would
always
be in a better. We would be in a better place, in a different world. Yes, yes,
because I feel, most parents, mothers are so forgiving and so understanding, always comes from a place of trust, a place of love. The world would be.
that's right. That's right.
But thank you, and I'm going to wrap up in a few minutes, and I think you already spoke to it. But what would you like um, your readers, or rather, what do you hope for your readers to take away from your book?
I think that my biggest hope would be for my readers to feel a little shift inside of themselves, like a little shift. If you could um, feel that the book changed something in you, even if it's a very tiny shift, I think that would be something that I would love to accomplish and to see. I remember that Olga Tokarczuk was saying something about, because she's a trained psychologist, she was saying that a patient who comes for a session, a therapy session, um, always kind of becomes a different person when they leave. And I feel like this is something I would like to accomplish, I guess, that I would like my reader to become a little bit different person, a person of more kind of empathy and love for others than they were when they started reading the book. Like there is a little bit of change, I guess. That's a huge. That's a huge. That would be a huge accomplishment, and I would be honored if that could happen.
And I honestly think, at least for me as a reader, um, Tahir, and that's really, I have to really congratulate you again, because first of all, it's such a brave topic to write about. Um, but also for you as a writer to be able to create this character who does something really horrendous and yet leave the reader with some empathy for him. That's such an achievement, and I have to congratulate you for it.
Oh, thank you, Ruth. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and here is the book again. We Were Twins. And Danuta, where can readers or people interested in purchasing the book find it?
Um, It is everywhere where books can be found, of course, on Amazon, but also in all bookstores. Can be purchased in any bookstore.
All right, thank you. And that was my last question for you. Thank you so much for your time today, Danuta. I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Danuta today. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please like, comment, share this conversation, and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Saha Podcast. I'd like to thank Melike Mensa, my co-producer, and the Nomadic Band for the music. Thank you.